Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the How Did You Learn to Do That podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in this week for another great episode. I so appreciate and love this community that we've created together, and for all of you coming back week after week to watch another episode. I so appreciate it, and I'm so grateful for all of you. If you could please help us continue to grow by liking, subscribing, and following us on YouTube and on all major podcast platforms, as well as on our social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest actually. That would be so amazing and would help us continue to grow and share this message that you can create the life that you wish existed for you with all of those people around you. And just a reminder that if you join our newsletter list, you can go onto our website, howdidyoulearntodothat.com, to join. You will get free access to a journaling guide, and you will be the first to know about some workshops that we have coming up and also to our course. And you'll get a little special surprise once you do that, and perhaps maybe even a discount code on that for our newsletter subscribers. So make sure you go on and do that. And don't forget, you do have to confirm your subscription before you start getting those emails. And you will also still get the challenge emails that we did a couple weeks ago, so you can get started on your journey to finding your purpose in life. So today we have an amazing guest. We have Danielle joining us from Van City Business Babes, the Business Babes Collective, and Danny Living Life. And I'm so excited to have her here to share your story of how she builds community, of how she decided to be a part of this entrepreneurial journey, and how she helps other businesses to grow. So she'll be joining us in just shortly, and I'm so excited to have you hear her story. And also, just a reminder, if there's anybody that you know that you're interested to hear their story and how they learned to do something, and you're inspired by their journey, or you yourself have done that and you want to share your story, make sure that you email us info@howdidyoulearntodo.that, and I will respond back to you and hopefully get you onto the podcast or get the person that you have nominated onto the podcast to share their story. Okay, so stay tuned. Hi, everyone. I'd like to introduce Danielle here from Business Babes Collective. And Danielle is the founder of the Business Babes Collective, and she has many chapters under that umbrella: Van City Business Babes, San Diego Business Babes, Toronto Business Babes. And she also has her own account at Danny Living Life. And the Business Babes Collective is a global community for female entrepreneurs. Danielle helps small business owners scale their income, influence, and impact through hosting mastermind groups, workshops, and coaching one-on-one. She's an expert in building and thriving community and creating collaborations that elevate your brand. Danielle started in the world of business by launching her first business at the age of 20, and then went on to help her mom build a global consulting company. She is now on a mission to help purpose-driven entrepreneurs achieve their goals and create businesses and lives that are not only fulfilling to them, but also make an impact in the world. And I personally was grateful enough to have been a part of one of Danielle's courses, Action Takers Club, just this last summer in June and July, and it was an amazing experience. So I'm so grateful to have Danielle join me on this podcast to share her story and her journey.
Thank you so much for having me, Angeza.
Thank you for joining me. And so, I'll start off basically asking you, what set you on this journey to creating the Business Babes Collective, and why did you choose the path of becoming an entrepreneur and building the community that you've built and helping other entrepreneurs build and scale their businesses?
Yeah, so that is a really great question. As you kind of heard before about kind of my journey of how I first started my first business when I was 20, still in university, and I always kind of had a passion for entrepreneurship and studied business in school, and wasn't really sure what that was going to look like long term, but I tried lots of different businesses, different business models, and what it all came down to at the end of the day was I loved community. I loved helping people. I loved building relationships and building connections, and that was just my passion. And so I didn't really know what that was going to look like as a business going forward, but I started noticing, because I was doing a lot of networking myself, I started noticing that there wasn't a lot of opportunity for either younger business owners or female owned business owners to connect and to learn and to grow. And so that's kind of where it started. I was looking for something like that myself and realized that there was nothing locally. And so obviously the first place that I started the business and started hosting events was in Vancouver, where I'm from. And so I started hosting these little events and kind of started as a hobby, and slowly but surely it started kind of growing. And now, like you said, we have different chapters. We have 5 different chapters. And because of everything that's happened in the last few months, it's kind of grown more globally and really kind of expanded into, women from all around North America and even just around the world. So we do, yeah, education. We foster community. We teach courses, and it's all to really help women grow their businesses and make an impact at the same time. So, yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And I'm so excited. I know that you have the very first virtual conference coming up in September, and I'm so excited for that. And that's, I can definitely see how, I've always heard of Fancy Business Babes and the Business Babes Collective before I became an entrepreneur, but now I just see it everywhere. And I just commend you on how amazing of a community you've built over the last several years. And I'm so excited for you. And but building the actual community, it's sometimes it's hard work. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you going every single day to continue to build this community of engaged entrepreneurs that are all helping each other to build and grow their businesses?
Yeah, it's a great question. And definitely there's a lot of growing pains and hard moments for sure, especially in the last few months as kind of everything has changed. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate if you're entrepreneurial or, your business has probably shifted over the past few months and really grown. And so I think what keeps me motivated is really going back to kind of the purpose behind why we're doing what we're doing, which is, to just provide a community for these women. Because I know for me, for example, when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, I was lonely because I didn't really know anyone else doing the same thing as I was doing. And so I was kind of searching for that community. So I know a lot of other women are searching for that too. And they just want to feel like they're not alone, and they want to know like where they can go to get support or feel connected. And so that's really, I think what keeps me inspired is like going back to, okay, why are we doing this in the first place? Because you can get kind of so caught up, I think, a lot of times in business in the day-to-day tasks that you're doing. And when you come across hurdles or hardships or, things aren't going your way, you kind of just get lost in it. And so I think it's so important to like come back to, okay, what is the purpose? Why am I doing this in the first place? And I think that's why it's so important to have a really strong why and a strong purpose, because that's what's going to get you through the hard times. And tactically, that means reaching out to the community that I've built and asking for help, or just even having people to talk to say, hey, I'm going through this challenge. Like other people are also going through the same challenges, so it makes you feel like not alone that way too. And then, yeah, like listening to podcasts. I love reading books. I love to read as well. And staying in contact with people that are like-minded, I think is so key as well. And during this time, it's a little bit harder because, we have to seek for that online instead of being able to have that community in person, but it's still possible. So that's kind of what I like to do to stay motivated and stay inspired.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you said your why needs to be, you always have to go back to your why in order to be able to manage the difficult times. And I feel that, in starting this as well, and, whenever you start a new business, and as and with all the entrepreneurs that you've helped, the beginning is the hardest time, and you always kind of question the why and or what, but when you go back to the why, then you realize I have to keep going because this is important to me. And I mentioned in a story today that that, and I mentioned to you that today was a challenging day. I just felt very tired, very burnt out, and I needed a break. And I believe in the power of the universe. And as I was getting ready to do this recording, I got a message from someone that I don't know, who said, I love what you're doing, just keep doing it. And I was like, wow, like that's the why, the impact, because sharing stories like yours with people and sharing tips and advice, is the why for me. And I love that's what you said, is important for you to keep yourself going as well. And I do, the thing about the online, when I was writing out the plans for this podcast, it was to be in person. I was going to create a little area in my home to have guests come in, and we were going to record together. It was going to be beautiful. And then when COVID hit, of course, I had to move it all online, and I didn't have that option. But I'm so grateful for it, because I've been able to connect with people from all around the world. I had somebody from Mongolia who, can come to my home to record with me, right? And then, and connecting with yourself, and connecting with many of the other speakers. So I felt like I was really grateful for COVID. So I know you said you've had to pivot and it's turned into a global community. And so how has the change of the last few months, how have you been able to pivot and strategize, but also stay true to yourself and, take that time to work on your own goals and your self-care, and not kind of losing track of where you were going, and also making sure that you take time to relax? How do you manage changing your business so much and being able to take care of yourself at the same time?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think at the beginning, when everything was kind of new and we weren't really sure how long we were going to have to pivot, and we weren't able to do our in-person events anymore. So for those of you who are listening who maybe are not as familiar with what we do, is the main premise of our business and how we started was hosting events, in-person events. And so that obviously had to change. And at the beginning, it was really hard, because the whole premise of what we were doing was trying to figure out, okay, how do we create this community, and how do we keep this community alive and thriving, and just as encouraging and supportive online as we were doing at our in-person events. And so trying to kind of translate that online was tricky, and it was definitely challenging, but I think it definitely pushed us outside of our comfort zone. And it also allowed us to think a little bit bigger picture on where we see the community going. And so, like you said, the global conference that we're doing, it's the first time that all of the chapters are coming together to do one event and one conference, which is really exciting, because we've always been doing our own things in our own cities. And so that's one thing that's been encouraging. And with that also, it's allowed us to all kind of handle different aspects of the business. Whereas, with the in-person events, it was just us and then our small teams if we had them in each of our cities. And so now it's, all of us chapter leaders working together and kind of feeding off of each other. So that's been really great. And then when it comes to, taking care of yourself and having time to relax, that's something that I definitely have always struggled with, and have always tried to improve on, is disconnecting from work. And I think one of the things that's so difficult about it, and maybe some people can relate, is that I actually love what I do so much, and I find such purpose in it. And so for me, a lot of times it filters into my daily life, because I'm always thinking of new ideas and I'm connecting with people. And a lot of it is what I would be doing anyways, even if I wasn't running a business around it. And so for me, disconnecting, I think a big way that's helped me is my husband actually is, he works more traditional 9-to-5 job. And so he is, okay, we're going to be doing this, and you're disconnected from work, or I'll leave my phone in the other room. I have to actually just physically not be by my computer or by my phone to just give myself that space, or else it's so easy to just go on your phone and check some emails and just do a few things while you're waiting for something. And so putting those boundaries, I guess, those really strict boundaries around myself has really helped. And I also try to take weekends off, and that's something that is probably within the past year has become pretty consistent. Is that I'll try to take most of the weekend off. And that really helps to kind of keep that balance in place too. And I know it's not possible for everyone, especially if you are still working a full time job. But if you can, just like take that time or even parts of the weekend or maybe one day of the week where you just take it completely off and you don't do anything to do with work, because that's when you're going to get some of your best ideas, as well as when you come from a place of rest rather than trying to fit in work in every single millisecond of your day. It's just you're gonna burn out. Like, burnout is very, very real. And I've experienced it a few times during my journey. So yeah, hopefully that's encouraging to some people, is that like it's not easy for me, but like you just have to kind of put your boundaries around yourself, and that's kind of how you do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that a lot of those boundaries when you are becoming an entrepreneur and not having the traditional 9 to 5 where the office closes at a certain time, so you actually have to leave and you can't sometimes take your work with you. I think a lot of that's in the mind, and it's just sheer will to close down at a certain time and just say, okay, I'm off work now. And I struggle with that too, but that I do work the full-time job and then do this afterwards. But I feel like when I see my daughter, she's the one that's like all over me. So she forces me to be off for a period of time. And but I think having that balance is so true, like you said. And so you built your business when you were 20, and then you built the Business Babes Collective after that. What is the biggest difference you noticed in yourself when you built your first business to when you built the Business Babes Collective? What were some of those learnings, some of those advice that you could share with someone that is building their very first business?
Hmm. Yeah, I think, well, when with my first business, I did not know anything. Like, I just was really like starting from scratch. I did a ton of research on how to build a business, and all the kind of technical things that go around it, like how do you register your business and all of that. And I think one big thing that I've learned is that I think what I thought back then was like, okay, I'm going to get to a point in my business where I just know everything. And I just feel like super confident in like every aspect of running my business. That's what I thought. And what I've learned over the years is that like you never know everything. Like, you're always learning and you're always growing, and that's a good thing. And so, when it comes to running a business, just understanding that there's going to be a lot of things that you don't know when you first get started, and that can be really overwhelming, but just learn one thing at a time, and also ask for help. Like, I think when I started my business, I wanted to learn everything myself or do everything myself. And what I've learned is like, I don't need to know how to do everything, as long as I'm willing to ask for help or willing to outsource to different people who know more than I do in certain areas. Um, if you, for example, want to, let's say, like build out a really complicated website and you have this vision for it, but you don't know the technical things behind it, then are you willing to like outsource that to someone who knows what they're doing? And then you can focus on the big picture. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like, for me, I'm like a big picture person, and I see like what I want things to look like or what I want things to do, to be like. And then I try to find people who actually know how to strategically put those things in place and then be able to hire those things out. And so yeah, I think just recognizing that you're never going to know everything, but just learn one thing at a time, put one one foot in front of the other, and just keep moving forward, and ask for help. That's huge. Don't be nervous to ask for support, and yeah, invest in yourself too. Like, I think so often we just think like, oh, I'll figure it out on my own, or maybe hiring someone to help you with it, or hiring a coach, or buying a course, or whatever that looks like, so that you can get that education. Like, you spend 4 years in university a lot of times getting a degree so that you can do something. So when you start a business, you don't have to necessarily do the traditional like education, but continue to invest in yourself to learn new skills too.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that investing in yourself is so important because like you said, like you can get there and you can do that with your own hard work and sweat equity and you can get there, but it will just take longer and you may not get all those little tips and tricks. And I know for myself, doing the Action Takers Club was kind of my big first investment into myself and into this business. And I was a little unsure about it at first, but I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And, it was so valuable for me. And it wasn't the major topics, but it was the little snippets, the tips and tricks that I was like, oh, wow, that's so valuable. And I didn't know that. And which have made like the biggest difference for me and my brand. And those things I think is something that I would probably never know
Mhm,
on my own because that comes with experience and
mhm,
knowledge. And I think that that's so true what you said about investing. And like, and you're right. We spend a lot of money on 4-year degrees to get
mhm.
a job, and myself, I spent over 40,000 to get a
Yeah,
master's up until I got my master's degree. And so that's a lot of money. And,
yeah.
spending a couple $100s to build a business for myself, to me, the cost benefit seems
Mhm,
very, very valuable there. So I completely agree with that. And I love what you said about the fact that you don't have to do everything. And, and when I started, I was definitely like, well, I need to know everything. I need to know this and I need to know that and this and that. And now I realize that, I don't need to know everything. I just know where I want to go with this and I just need some help. And I'm very similar to you where I'm the big picture thinker and I can strategize and I can plan, I can figure out what I want and how I want things to be. But the technical side of things is where I'm not strong. So and that's where I need help with, and I need to outsource it. So, I love what you have to say about that as well. So, um, I know you talked about your husband being the one that kind of encourages you to take the time off and be able to manage. So, how do you actually, what advice could you give to someone that's trying to manage that balance as well? The balance between, making time for yourself, but making time for people that are in your lives as well, for your friends, your family, your partners, your children, and continuing your business. I feel that I had this misconception that I had to be on Instagram, all day, all night in order to be seen. And I know you share this with me where it was, no, that's not the case. You don't have to be, you just have to be strategic. But what are some of those kind of
mhm.
pieces of advice you could give to someone and that was shared with you when you started your business?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely felt the same when I started the business. I was like, oh, I have to just like spend so much time on social media and just, yeah. And it can obviously be such a huge time, like suck, right? To be on social media and be active all the time. And so really what I would say is use like time blocking. That's a huge thing when it comes to your schedule. So if you can actually block out time for, let's say, posting on social media, or even you if you want to engage, then actually schedule that in, like whether that's 10 to 15 minutes of engaging, and then set a timer for yourself. So I know for me, timers work really well for me. Is I'll set a timer for myself, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this task, whatever that might be. It could be checking your email. It could be posting on social media. It could be, doing your accounting, whatever that might be for you. And set that timer. And then when that timer is done, you're like, okay, I'm done with that task. And you move on to the next one. And you'd be so surprised. Like when I actually implement this and use that system, you're so surprised with actually how many tasks you actually get done and how much more productive you feel when you can do that, because or else you just um, the time like expands, right? So you're like, okay, I'm going to do this within 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And then the next thing you know, like 2 hours has passed and you're like, what happened? Like, what did I go into some sort of time warp? Like, what is this? So I think it's like so important to keep yourself on task, to do that. And then another thing is like write down the tasks that you're completing too, because another thing that I will say is that at the end of the day, it's really nice to see all the different things that you've accomplished. Because at the end of the day, if you're feeling like, oh, I didn't really get anything done, but you actually did, you just weren't keeping track of it, right? Yeah. So keep track of the things you're getting done, check it off so that at the end of the day, you're like, you know what, I got these big things done. All the rest of the tasks that I still have, those can wait till tomorrow because, and keeping track of that. Because we can always do more, right? Like as entrepreneurs, we can always work on more things. We can always be more active on social media. We can always do this, do that. But really figuring out like what's important to you, because for me, my business is important, but like my family is more important. And, like for me, my faith is really important to me, and all these things that are important to me in my life, I don't want to miss out on that because I'm so busy building a business, right? Yeah. So really figuring out like what are your values, what's important to you, and then is the time you're spending on each thing, is that actually lining up with your values? And that's what I had to ask myself, a few years ago when I was so busy with work. I was like, man, this isn't actually aligning with what I say is most important to me. It's not actually aligning with how much time I'm spending on it. And so just check in with yourself and see like, are the time I'm spending on things really aligning with the vision that I have for my life? Because there's no point in building a successful business if you don't have the life that you want, right? So that's something that I think is super important to recognize.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I always share and say that by getting yourself on a journey where you're self-reflecting or understanding where you want to go with your life and, getting on the journey to your purpose in life, and whatever that may be, whether that's building a business or changing jobs or, being more involved in your community and in your faith or anything like that, mm-hmm. You always want to understand what are you doing and what do you want to create that you don't have in your life right now? What do you wish you had that you don't? And I love that you said that because I feel like I just had this conversation with myself last week, because for me, my why is time. I started this because I want the freedom of time in my life, time to spend with my family, my husband, my parents, and everybody around me, because I felt like I never had enough time for it. And so I did have to check back in with my why recently, because I realized I was too engaged with building the brand and trying to do all the tasks on my to-do list. And I realized that I now had even less time than I initially did before I began. And so I have to reprioritize, and definitely setting a schedule is so important for yourself. And I love to color code, so my entire calendar is color coded based on priority. Things I have to do, things I could do if I have time, or things that if I want to, I should get to, but I don't have to. So I love that. And so I just wanted to ask, for you. So I know you said that you love to read books to kind of do some self-care, to check in with yourself and have some downtime. And I wanted to just ask, what else do you do that helps you become realigned? So sometimes when you feel that you've kind of lost control of your emotions or your mental state or the things that were most important to you and your why, what are some things that you do to be realigned to get you back onto your journey and get you back on the path that really resonates with your values and what you want to do and what's so important to you?
Yeah, so I think there's quite a few things. One thing is like when I'm feeling like I can tell, like I am really good at knowing, okay, I'm not in a good place right now. Like I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling stressed, or I'm just feeling grumpy, whatever that is for me. And so I know that that's time to actually disconnect from work. And it means that whether that looks like taking a walk, taking a long walk. Like I said, I really like listening to podcasts or different things. And so sometimes I'll take a walk and listen to a podcast. Sometimes that looks like taking a drive and, going to get a cup of coffee somewhere, or whatever, just disconnecting and really kind of separating myself from the work, because usually what ends up happening is when I'm overwhelmed or stressed, my brain isn't functioning in the right capacity to actually solve the problem, because there's too much going on. And so for me, I have to actually step back from work in order to find a solution. So then when I come back to it, I can do a brain dump, and like write out all the ideas, and my head's more clear on what I can actually do to get over that. And yeah, like I said, my faith is really important. So sometimes it's just like prayer is what I go to. Sometimes it's taking a nap. Like it looks different. Maybe it's like calling my mom or my sister or whatever. And so yeah, it always looks different. It's not ever like the exact same thing. Like when it comes to, having strict routines, I wish I was better with routines, but I just have a list of things that I go to, and depending on how I feel or what it looks like in that situation, I'll kind of go towards whatever is I'm feeling in the moment. But yeah, I think taking a break from the problem usually helps. And so I would encourage anyone, if you're feeling super overwhelmed or you're feeling like, I don't know what the solution is to this problem, take time away and come back to it. And usually you'll have like a clearer idea when you come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I love that you have a couple things that you do whenever you feel like you need to get back on track or realign or come back to your positive mindset. And yeah, and for me too, I think it's just I also don't have a strict routine. I do have a morning routine that I like to stick to, but I find that whenever I don't do my morning routine is when it starts piling up and I start feeling disconnected.
Right.
But yeah, for me, it's definitely that whenever I feel that way, taking a nap is the best thing for me. But even in
I love naps.
I love naps too. But I've realized lately that indulging in some comedy on Netflix really has been helping
Ooh,
me.
I like that.
I don't have to do anything, I can just have somebody or something entertain me. And this last couple of weeks, it's been the Indian Matchmaker series on Netflix, which
I've been wanting to watch that. It looks so good.
it's so good, but I find it to be comedy because it is just so
Yeah,
funny. Like
love
the
it.
things that this woman does to find a match for people, I just find so funny. And it's actually amazing because you see the different mindsets of people. And the biggest
Yeah.
thing I've realized is that how much our families and our upbringing plays into our personalities. And so
Hmm.
many of these characters, or they're real people, they're not characters, but
Yeah.
so many of
Yeah.
these real people, they're, when she asks, what are you looking for in a mate? It reminds me a lot of like, when starting a business, it's they decide to say what they think their mom wants for them or their sister wants for them or somebody else, but then she goes back and she's like, no, I'm asking for your criteria. What do you want? And it resonates with me because I sometimes think like when I'm thinking of my business, I think of like, okay, what would so and so want to see in my business, or what would so and so, what do you think that would drive this or drive that? And sometimes I have to go back and be like, what do you want to do? Because I don't want to, cater to everybody so much that I end up moving away from my intention and my purpose of starting this as well. And I'm sure you
Absolutely.
can resonate with that too.
Yes. Yes. I mean, and that's the thing. That's the hard part about, I think any business, because no matter what business you're starting, you're going to build a community when you build your business. And, to have a successful business, you'll have other people that are, wanting to give their input, which is so helpful, but it also can be hard because everyone has opinions about what you're doing and what you should do or what they want to see. And so you have to really take that and listen to it, but then say, okay, is this actually the direction that I want to go? Because at the end of the day, it's your business, so it's your vision, right?
Yeah.
So if it's not aligning with your vision or even your values, that's something that's so key to me, is like staying within your values, because it's so easy to get sidetracked and like, go down this whole other path that you never really meant to go down, and start pursuing things that you're like, wait, I didn't even want to pursue this in the first place. So shiny object syndrome is like a real thing where you're like, that looks kind of cool. That person's doing that. Why, like, maybe I can do that too. Or this
Yeah.
person said I should try this. Maybe I'll do that too. So yeah, really kind of like staying clear and staying in your lane is so important. But it's hard, especially in the online world. There's almost too many options, like there's too many things that you could do. So
Yeah.
sometimes that's overwhelming in itself. So kind of narrowing down and really figuring out, what do you want? And then also, something that we talked about in Action Takers Club too is like aligning it with, what do you want your life to look like? Because if the business you're building isn't aligning with the life that you want, then that's not going to be good for you long term either, right?
Yeah.
So that's always something to think about. But it is hard, as like especially, I'm sure a lot of people that are listening are creatives too. So I know for me, I have like new ideas every day. So it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with you that it can be overwhelming because there's so many different routes, and even growing your audience, I feel like there's so many tips and tricks out there. And I just came across one recently, of someone that said, go through your list of followers on Instagram and start assessing, and start removing some of those bot accounts. And I think you've said this before too, that like you remove those bot accounts because that will increase your engagement on Instagram and actually gives you a better picture of what you're doing. And I remember telling this to a friend of mine too on the weekend, and I was explaining this strategy to her, and she was like completely confused because she said, why would you want to remove followers? Isn't the whole point of Instagram to have as many followers as possible? And it just really made me think and reflect upon that, because I just said we all have a different strategy in our minds. And so something that works for one person may not work for another person. And
Yeah.
that's why, like you mentioned, it's important to know your why and what are your goals and what are you intending to do, because there are so many options out there, like you mentioned. And but you're able to kind of filter those options out by understanding what your purpose and your intention is with what you're
Yeah.
trying to do with your brand and yourself and the life that you want to live.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's about, like, at the end of the day, when you say that, it's true, because like social media for me, and I know something that we talked about too, is just that it's all about relationships. Like, the number doesn't matter at all. Like, it's all about building those relationships with those individual people. And when you think about followers just as followers and not people, then you're actually losing the whole purpose of social media in the first place. So that, yeah, it's so important to really understand like your purpose and your vision, and yeah, that's not going to align with everyone else, but staying clear, and knowing that not everyone, if you're building a business, not everyone is your ideal client, right? Not everyone is your ideal, going to be attracted to you in the way that you do things. I know I've realized that for myself too in our community. I think our community is amazing, but that doesn't mean that it's for everybody, right? Because we have specific values and different things and ways that we do things, and that's going to align with some people, but that might not align with other people, and that's okay. So I feel like that kind of goes along with what you're saying. Like, everyone kind of has a different
Yeah.
perspective on things, and that's okay because we're all different. So
Yeah, completely okay. And that it's completely okay to be unique and not have to, conform to all the same things as everybody else. But yeah, well, I've absolutely loved having this conversation with you. And just to, before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you a couple things. So I just wanted to ask you, what is, for someone that's just starting their business and brand, what are the top things you would recommend? So what is the top book you would recommend, the top podcast that you would recommend them to check out, and the top resource or strategy that you think they should really look at? And I know we talked about understanding their why, so that could be it too. But
Mhm.
what are those top 3 things that you would recommend? And where can people find you on social media? And especially with the virtual conference, where can they find out more information about
Yeah, thank you. So, let's see. When it comes to resources for building a business, I would say, okay, my number one tip would, like you said, be figure out your why and understand why you want to build your business in the first place. And if you find yourself just saying, well, I want to be able to replace my income, or if it has to do with money, that's awesome. And I'm so glad that you want to make it, that's the purpose of a business, to be profitable. But you want to have a deeper why than just the money aspect. So, what is the deeper purpose of why you want to build this business? What do you want to help people with? What's the purpose behind that? And really kind of go deep into it and take some time with a piece of paper and a pen and write down, like, why am I doing this? And then ask yourself, okay, from there, well, why do I want that? And why, and why, and why? And it might seem like silly to do that, but trust me, you'll get to the bottom of the real true purpose behind that. And that will keep you going. That will actually keep you going and really set your vision, um, instead of just being, okay, I want to make X amount of money, right?
that?
So getting clear on that. So that's number one. And then number two is really understanding, okay, what are some of the first steps? Because I think we get so overwhelmed with like millions of things we need to do to start our businesses. But like, what is those next 2 or 3 steps that you can do today to move you forward towards that goal? So that could be one thing, like research names for what I want to call my business, right? It could be super simple. Or like go on Pinterest and create a mood board of what I want my brand to look like. It could be super, super small things, but like break it down into really, really small, manageable tasks. So that's another thing. As far as like books and podcasts, I have so many I love. One of my favorites right now is called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. That's a really good podcast I like. Books, I would say one that I'm reading right now that I love is called Dream Big, by Bob Goff. Bob Goff's like one of my favorite authors. But I'm trying to think of more of like a strategic business book. Um, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy is a really good book, and it's all about kind of what I was talking about before, having those like small incremental steps that kind of leads to your success. And what was another question that you asked me?
I think you touched on them. I think you said
Did I?
like
Okay.
book, podcast, resource, and then I said where can people find you and
Oh,
can they find out
fine.
more about the virtual conference?
Okay, awesome. Yeah, if you go to businessbabescollective.com, that's where you can find out all about the virtual conference. There's a link there to it. And then also, if you go to our resources page, there's a bunch of free resources that you can download if you want tips on specific things. And then you can just find me at Danny Living Life on Instagram. That's where I like to hang out as far as social media. And then Business Babes Co. is our business account, and that kind of links to all the different accounts as well.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll link all of those accounts into the link on the link for the blog show notes and on the podcast. So and on Instagram. So thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing your story and all the great tips and ideas and advice you've given to people that want to begin to develop their own business and get set on their journey to finding their why and building something for themselves.
Thank you, Angeza. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the end of that episode. I hope that you're inspired by the story Danielle shared of creating the community that she has created by setting her goals and knowing exactly what she wanted. But most importantly, making sure that when there are challenges or struggles, that she aligns herself and gets herself to a place where she can continue to grow and go forward. And always going back to her why, her faith, her family, her friends, for that inspiration and for that guidance. So I hope that you've been inspired to know that You have the ability to catalyze your life from ordinary to extraordinary, and all you have to do is commit to yourself and get started. So if you have any questions, you know where to reach me. I would love if you could share, like, and subscribe to us, as well as leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help us grow. Okay, we'll see you guys next week for another amazing episode. Bye.